Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to talk about something that is, well, one of the most dangerous and misunderstood forces in all of finance: liquidity risk. It's that hidden trap that can turn a perfectly good investment into a loss you just can't escape. It's the reason why, sometimes, markets simply break. So, let's start by just thinking about this question. We all worry about prices going down, right? But what happens when the sell button itself just stops working? What happens when there are literally no buyers left and you're just stuck? Believe me, this is not some theoretical exercise. It's a very real thing that has brought down some of the smartest investors out there.
And that leads us right into what we call the liquidity illusion. It's this quiet, really dangerous belief that's buried deep inside most financial models. This assumption that you can always sell when you want to. But as we're about to see, that assumption is incredibly fragile.
When we talk about market risk, we're almost always talking about the price moving up or down. But liquidity risk, that's a whole different beast. It's the risk that the entire game of buying and selling just breaks down. The price might be right there on your screen, but if you can't actually sell your position at that price, or any price close to it, then that number is completely meaningless.
To really get a handle on this, let's use a metaphor. I want you to think of a market like a big theater. When everything's calm, the show is going on, there are dozens of open exits. Getting in and out is super easy, it's orderly. But what happens when someone yells fire? This comparison here shows you that critical shift. In a normal market, liquidity is continuous. You can sell a little, you can sell a lot, no problem. But during a stress event, it just collapses. Suddenly, all those open exits, they slam shut. And suddenly, everyone is trampling each other to get through one single jammed door. And the liquidity providers, you can think of them as the market's middlemen, the ones always ready to buy or sell. Well, they just vanish, precisely when you need them the most.
And this chaos creates what's known as a one-way market. And believe me, it is the ultimate trap. The very moment everyone needs to sell is the very moment the ability to sell just disappears. It becomes a nasty feedback loop. The panic causes a lack of buyers, which of course causes even more panic.
Okay, so if you take away one thing from this part, make it this. We have this tendency to think of an asset as being liquid or illiquid, as if it's some permanent feature, like its color. But it's not. Liquidity is completely dependent on the state of the market. An asset can be incredibly liquid on a Tuesday and then completely untradeable by Wednesday. Those exits are only there until someone yells fire.
So, how does that switch get flipped? How does a perfectly functioning market just break down into a full-blown crisis? Well, it happens through a cascade, a kind of chain reaction that just keeps feeding on itself. It all kicks off with some kind of shock, some bit of bad news that triggers a wave of selling. Then, in response, the liquidity providers, the market makers, they see this rising risk and they pull back. That's step 2, and it is absolutely critical. Because as they vanish, the sustainable volume, that's the amount you can actually trade without crashing the price, it shrinks dramatically. And all of a sudden, a position that might have taken you a day to sell could now take you months. Your time to exit just explodes. And at that point, the price isn't falling because of the initial news anymore. It's collapsing simply because there are way too many sellers all trying to squeeze through a tiny, tiny exit. The market is now completely driven by flows.
And this is where the size of your position becomes your worst enemy. See, in normal times, you might think, okay, selling twice as much will have maybe twice the impact. But in a liquidity crisis, it's not linear at all. Selling twice as much might have 10 times the impact. Or it might make it completely impossible to sell, period. Your own size becomes the very reason you can't get out. The position literally becomes a trap of your own making.
So if this happens, you might be wondering, wait a minute, what about all those sophisticated risk models we're always hearing about? Well, this is the very moment they become utterly useless. The gains and the risk profiles they showed you on paper, they turn into very real and very different losses. The reason is simple, and it's pretty brutal. Almost every single statistical risk model has a fatal flaw buried deep in its code. It assumes you can actually make your trades. It assumes an orderly market. The second that assumption collapses, the model collapses right along with it. It's kind of like having a brilliant escape plan that assumes all the doors will be unlocked. So, what's a better way to think about this? Well, let me introduce you to a concept called time to exit. It's a really simple but powerful idea. Instead of just asking how much the price might change, you ask a different question. How long would it actually take me to sell this entire position in a stressed market? This forces you to face the reality of a shrinking market volume. In this chart right here, this shows you exactly why that matters so much.
A big position that you thought you could get out of in, say, a week could suddenly take you 3 months or even more to unwind during a crisis. And for every single day you are stuck trying to sell, you are exposed to prices moving further and further against you. The risk isn't just price. The risk is time.
You know, this quote from our source material really says it all. In a crisis, the smartest person in the room isn't the one with the best prediction. It's the one who can get smaller, faster. The ability to reduce your exposure, to actually sell, that's the only thing that guarantees survival.
So this brings us to our final and most crucial section. How do you actually prepare for this? How do you manage a risk that's invisible most of the time? Well, the key is to design your entire strategy around the fire, not around the calm day.
This requires a complete flip in your thinking. Don't size your positions based on how easy it is to get in. You have to size them based on the real feasibility of getting out under the worst possible conditions you can imagine.
So this leaves us with a few key principles for survival. First, always assume stress conditions are right around the corner, not the calm you see today. Second, size your positions based on exit capacity. Third, you have to acknowledge that getting out is always harder than getting in. And finally, remember that when liquidity vanishes, it happens suddenly, and all the old rules about what drives prices, they go right out the window.
So we'll end with this question for you to think about, because liquidity risk isn't just some abstract concept for giant hedge funds. It really affects everyone. It's a reminder that on paper you can have a perfect strategy, but in the real world your survival is determined by one simple thing, whether or not when the panic starts, you can actually find your way out.